In a world where children's innocence is too often destroyed by the terrible acts of sexual predators, some parents have taken justice into their own hands. They no longer trust the legal system to protect their kids. These stories of parents seeking revenge, driven by the unimaginable pain and anger of having their children victimized, raise tough questions. How far would we go to protect our loved ones? What happens when we decide to take the law into our own hands? From a father killing his son's abuser in a busy airport to a mother who gunned down her son's alleged attacker in a courthouse, these tales of parental payback are a powerful reminder. They show the devastating impact of child sexual abuse and the desperate steps some parents may take when faced with the worst nightmare imaginable. Gary Plauche. Gary Plauche, a devoted father from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, experienced a horrific tragedy in 1984 when Jeffrey Doucet, a trusted family friend and karate instructor, kidnapped and sexually abused his 11-year-old son, Jody. Doucet had tricked Jody into taking a trip with him, but instead of a short excursion, he took the boy to a motel room in California where he molested him. Jody managed to contact his family, leading to Doucet's arrest. As Doucet was being brought back to Baton Rouge, Gary Plauche made a decision that would change his life forever. Disguised in a baseball cap and sunglasses, he waited at the airport, armed with a gun. When Doucet arrived, escorted by police, Plauche approached him and fired a single shot to the head. The shocking moment was caught on film by a news crew covering the story. Plauche's actions sparked intense debate. Some saw him as a hero, a father pushed to the edge by the unthinkable pain inflicted on his son. Others saw him as a vigilante, taking justice into his own hands. At his trial, Plauche's lawyers argued that the trauma of his son's abuse had left him unable to think clearly. In the end, the judge recognized the extraordinary situation and gave Plauche a sentence of 5 years probation and 300 hours of community service instead of prison. The Gary Plauche case remains a powerful example of how far a parent might go when their child is horrifically abused, and the difficult moral and legal questions that come with seeking justice. Paramjit Singh. In a shocking case that unfolded in India, Paramjit Singh took matters into his own hands after his daughter was allegedly molested by a teenager named Parminder Singh. The incident occurred in the Batinda district of Punjab, where Paramjit Singh's world was shattered upon learning of his daughter's abuse. During a court hearing, Paramjit Singh approached Parminder Singh, expressing his desire to settle the matter outside of the courtroom. Under the guise of a peaceful resolution, Paramjit offered the teenager a ride back to their village on his motorcycle. However, the situation took a violent turn when they reached Jumba village. In an act of revenge, Paramjit Singh tied Parminder Singh to a tree and attacked him with a machete. Shockingly, he severed both of the teenager's hands, leaving him severely injured. Local residents discovered Parminder Singh and alerted the authorities, who rushed him to a nearby hospital for emergency treatment. The brutal incident sparked outrage and debate throughout the community. Some argued that Paramjit Singh's actions were driven by the anguish and frustration of a father seeking justice for his daughter in a system that often fails victims of abuse. Others maintained that vigilantism could not be condoned and that proper legal channels should be followed. Paramjit Singh was arrested the day after the incident and charged with attempted murder under Section 307 of the Indian Penal Code. During questioning, he allegedly admitted to planning the crime in advance, having brought a rope and a sharp weapon with him. Andrei Bambersky. In a heart-wrenching story that spans decades, Andrei Bambersky, a French citizen, fought tirelessly to bring his daughter's alleged killer to justice. In 1982, Andrei's 14-year-old daughter, Kalinka, was found dead while in the care of her stepfather, Dieter Krombach, a German doctor, in the town of Lindau, Germany. Suspicions arose when Krombach gave inconsistent accounts of the events leading to Kalinka's death. An autopsy revealed suspicious injuries and signs of sexual abuse, but German authorities closed the case without charging Krombach. Devastated and convinced of Krombach's guilt, Andrei Bambersky embarked on a relentless quest for justice. For years, Bambersky fought to have the case reopened, gathering evidence and pushing for Krombach to face trial. He even went as far as distributing leaflets accusing Krombach of murder. Despite his efforts, the German legal system refused to extradite Krombach to France, where he had been tried and convicted in absentia. Frustrated by the lack of progress, Bambersky took a drastic step in 2009. He orchestrated the abduction of Krombach from Germany and had him delivered to French authorities. This extraordinary move finally led to Krombach's arrest and subsequent conviction for intentional violence that unintentionally resulted in death, receiving a 15-year prison sentence. Bamberski's actions, driven by his unwavering love for his daughter and his determination to see her killer brought to justice, divided public opinion. Some saw him as a father pushed to the brink, while others criticized his vigilante tactics. In the end, Bamberski himself faced trial for his role in Krombach's abduction, receiving a suspended prison sentence. Jesus Mora Flores. In a heart-wrenching case that shocked the small town of Shiner, Texas, a father faced an unimaginable nightmare when he discovered Jesus Mora Flores, a 47-year-old ranch hand, sexually assaulting his 5-year-old daughter. The incident occurred on the family's ranch in 2012, where the father, whose identity has been withheld, was tending to horses while his children played nearby. Upon hearing his daughter's screams, the father rushed to a secluded shack where he found Flores with the young girl, both with their underwear removed. In a fit of rage, the father began beating Flores, striking him repeatedly in the head and neck until he was rendered unconscious. In a chilling 911 call, the father can be heard pleading for help, explaining that he had caught someone assaulting his daughter and that the man was going to die from the injuries inflicted upon him. By the time authorities arrived on the scene, Flores had succumbed to his wounds. The case ignited a fierce debate about the use of deadly force in defense of one's child. Many in the community rallied around the father, arguing that he had acted out of an instinctual need to protect his daughter from a heinous crime. Others, while sympathetic to the father's plight, questioned whether the use of lethal force was justified. Ultimately, a grand jury declined to indict the father, determining that his actions were a justifiable defense of his daughter. The case highlighted the profound emotional toll that sexual abuse can have on victims and their families, as well as the complex legal and moral questions surrounding the use of force in such harrowing circumstances. Kenneth Faulkner. Kenneth Faulkner, a father from Maury County, Tennessee, found himself at the center of a controversial case when he took matters into his own hands after learning that his 2 young daughters had allegedly been solicited by a man named Thomas Williams. The girls, aged 4 and 7, were related to Williams through marriage. In December 2014, Faulkner reported the suspected abuse to the Columbia Police Department. Subsequently, in March 2015, a Maury County grand jury indicted Williams on 2 counts of solicitation of a minor, which involves enticing a person under the age of 18 to engage in sexual activity. Williams was arrested in April and released on a $2,000 bond the same day. Faulkner's anger reached a boiling point when he learned that Williams had accepted a plea deal that would result in no jail time, only 3 years of supervised probation. Driven by a desire to protect his daughters and frustrated with what he perceived as a lenient punishment, Faulkner confronted Williams. According to Faulkner, he asked Williams why he had committed the alleged crimes against his daughters, to which Williams reportedly replied, "I don't know." In the ensuing altercation, Faulkner admittedly punched Williams in the face and pushed him down the stairs. The incident left Williams hospitalized with injuries. The case sparked intense debate within the community, with many expressing support for Faulkner's actions as a father driven by love and the need to protect his children. Others, however, argued that vigilantism undermines the rule of law and that justice should be pursued through proper legal channels. Barry Gilton and Lupe Mercado. Barry Gilton and Lupe Mercado, a couple from San Francisco, found themselves entangled in a complex and emotionally charged case when their teenage daughter, Letitia, fell victim to Calvin Sneed, a pimp who lured her into prostitution. The story took a dark turn when Gilton, along with his cousin Antonio Gilton and friend Alfonso Williams, allegedly conspired to kill Sneed in a desperate attempt to save Letitia. Barry Gilton, a community activist and youth basketball coach, had dedicated his life to helping young people in San Francisco's Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood. Despite his efforts to steer kids away from gangs and violence, his own daughter became trapped in the dangerous world of sex trafficking. Letitia, who was 17 at the time, had moved to Los Angeles to escape troubles at home. There, she met Calvin Sneed, who initially posed as a boyfriend, but soon revealed his true intentions, forcing Letitia into prostitution through threats and violence. When Barry and Lupe discovered the truth about their daughter's situation, they tried to intervene, but Letitia Letitia refused to leave Sneed. Desperate and feeling helpless, Barry Gilton allegedly turned to his cousin and friend, both members of a local gang, for assistance. On June 4, 2012, Calvin Sneed was fatally shot while driving in San Francisco's Bayview district. Investigators believe that Gilton and his accomplices were responsible for the murder. The case against Barry Gilton and Lupe Mercado, who were initially charged with murder, took a surprising turn when federal prosecutors chose to charge them under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations (RICO) Act. The prosecution aimed to prove that the couple had participated in a criminal enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. Eduardo Gallo. Eduardo Gallo's world was shattered in July 2000 when his beloved 25-year-old daughter, Paola, vanished from their weekend house in Tepoztlan, Mexico. The family's worst fears were confirmed when they received a chilling ransom call from a gang of kidnappers demanding an exorbitant sum for Paola's safe return. Desperate to save his daughter, Eduardo Gallo managed to gather $188,500 and some jewelry, which he promptly handed over to the criminals. However, his efforts were in vain. A week later, Paola's lifeless body was found, bearing the tragic marks of a brutal murder. She had been shot in the back and neck. Gallo's grief was compounded by the knowledge that his daughter's final moments were filled with unimaginable terror. Though 3 suspects were swiftly apprehended, the ruthless individual who pulled the trigger remained at large. Consumed by an overwhelming desire for justice, Eduardo Gallo made a life-altering decision. He closed his successful consulting firm and dedicated himself to the relentless pursuit of his daughter's killer. For 2 years, Gallo transformed into a vigilante detective, tirelessly following leads and meticulously analyzing phone records. His investigation exposed the harrowing reality that 90% of kidnappings in Mexico go unreported due to families' fear of retaliation from the perpetrators. Gallo's unwavering determination ultimately led to a breakthrough. He traced one of the kidnappers to a payphone used shortly after Paola's. He closed his successful consulting firm, allowed the police to set up a surveillance operation, resulting in the arrest of 28-year-old Francisco Zamora Arellano. Under interrogation, Arellano confessed to his role in the heinous crime. Jay Maynor. In a heart-wrenching story that unfolded in Cullman County, Alabama, Jay Maynor took the law into his own hands when he confronted the man who had sexually abused his daughter years earlier. The events that led to this confrontation began in 2002, when Maynor's daughter, Julia, was allegedly molested by her adoptive grandfather, Raymond Earl Brooks. Brooks, who had a history of sexual abuse, pleaded guilty to the charges in 2002 and served a mere 27 months in prison. The lenient sentence left the Maynor family feeling betrayed by the justice system, and the trauma of the abuse continued to haunt Julia for years. In 2014, Jay Maynor's anger reached a boiling point when he learned that Brooks had been making derogatory comments about his daughter on social media. On June 8, 2014, Maynor armed himself with a gun and set out to confront Brooks at his home in Cullman. According to court documents, Maynor fired multiple shots at Brooks, ultimately killing him. He then proceeded to a nearby store where his stepdaughter's boyfriend worked, firing shots at him as well. The boyfriend escaped unharmed, and Maynor was later apprehended by the police. During his trial, Maynor's defense team argued that the psychological toll of his daughter's abuse had driven him to take matters into his own hands. They portrayed him as a father pushed to the brink by the failure of the justice system to adequately punish his daughter's abuser. In the end, Maynor pleaded guilty to the charges of murder and attempted murder. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with 20 years for each charge. Roberto Rubio. In a disturbing case that shocked the community of Palm Beach County, Florida, Roberto Rubio found himself at the center of a controversial vigilante justice story. Rubio's 13-year-old daughter confided in her mother, revealing that she had been sexually assaulted by a man known to the family. The mother promptly reported the incident to the authorities, but Rubio took matters into his own hands. Driven by anger and a fierce desire to protect his child, Rubio set out to confront the alleged perpetrator. He located the man hiding in his car and engaged him in a heated confrontation. As tensions escalated, Rubio produced a box cutter, leading to a physical struggle between the two men. Rubio later claimed that his intention was not to harm the alleged abuser, but rather to apprehend him and ensure he faced justice for his actions. However, when deputies arrived at the scene in response to the mother's call, they found themselves arresting both the accused assailant and Rubio himself. The community was divided in their response to Rubio's actions. Many empathized with his paternal instinct to defend his daughter and understood the overwhelming emotions that drove him to confront the alleged abuser directly. They argued that any father in his position would have reacted similarly, given the heinous nature of the crime committed against his child. However, others raised concerns about the dangers of vigilante justice and the importance of allowing law enforcement and the legal system to handle such cases. They emphasized that taking the law into one's own hands could lead to further violence and undermine the principles of due process. Jason Browning. In a shocking case that garnered national attention, Jason Browning, a father from Daytona Beach, Florida, took matters into his own hands when he discovered his 11-year-old son being sexually abused by a close family friend. The incident occurred on July 18, 2014, when Browning walked in on 18-year-old Raymond Frolander molesting his son. Upon witnessing the horrific act, Browning's parental instincts kicked in, and he immediately began beating Frolander. The enraged father punched and knocked the abuser unconscious, leaving him with severe injuries. Browning then called 911 to report the incident, telling the dispatcher, "I just walked in and found a grown man molesting my son, and I got him in a bloody puddle for you right now." The audio recording of the 911 call captured the raw emotions of a father grappling with the unimaginable trauma inflicted upon his child. Browning's voice trembled as he described the scene, stating that Frolander was still breathing but badly beaten. When asked if any weapons were involved, Browning replied, "My fist and my foot." The photographs of Frolander's battered face quickly spread across news outlets and social media, sparking a heated debate about vigilante justice and the lengths a parent might go to protect their child. Many expressed sympathy for Browning, arguing that his actions were justified given the heinous nature of the crime committed against his son. During Frolander's trial, it was revealed that the abuse had been ongoing for several years. In 2015, Frolander pleaded guilty to lewd and lascivious molestation of a child and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He narrowly avoided a mandatory life sentence by accepting a plea deal. Despite the violent nature of his response, Jason Browning faced no charges for his actions. The local police chief, Michael Chitwood, publicly stated that the father had acted as any parent would in such a situation. The case of Jason Browning highlights the profound impact of child sexual abuse on families and the overwhelming emotions that can drive a parent to take extreme measures to protect their child. Ellie Nesler. Ellie Nesler's story is a tragic and controversial one that highlights the profound impact of child sexual abuse on families and the lengths some parents may go to seek justice. In April 1993, Nesler made headlines when she shot and killed Daniel Mark Driver, the man accused of molesting her young son William during Driver's trial in a Jamestown, California courthouse. Nesler's son, then 7 years old, was one of several boys who had allegedly been sexually abused by Driver, a Christian camp worker. During Driver's preliminary hearing, Nesler smuggled a gun into the courthouse and fatally shot Driver 5 times in the head and neck. The case garnered significant media attention and sparked a heated debate about vigilante justice. Many sympathized with Nesler, viewing her actions as those of a mother driven to the brink by the trauma inflicted upon her child and the perceived failures of the justice system. Others, however, argued that her actions undermined the rule of law and set a dangerous precedent. In the aftermath of the shooting, it was revealed that Nesler had a history of drug abuse and had been under the influence of methamphetamine at the time of the incident. Despite initially pleading not guilty by reason of insanity, Nesler eventually pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Her conviction was later overturned on appeal due to juror misconduct, and she was released after serving 3 years. The case of Ellie Nesler raises complex questions about the role of vigilante justice, the limitations of the legal system in addressing the needs of victims and their families, and the long-lasting impact of childhood trauma. It serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the devastation caused by child sexual abuse and the desperate measures some parents may resort to when faced with the unimaginable. Kimberly Cunningham. In a heart-wrenching case that unfolded in Tennessee, Kimberly Cunningham took matters into her own hands when she learned that her daughter had been sexually abused by Kimberly's uncle, Coy Hundley, nearly 5 years earlier. The revelation shattered Kimberly's world, and she was driven to seek justice for her child. In October 2003, Kimberly confronted Coy Hundley at his workplace, a tool company in Cumberland County. She called him out to the parking lot, where a heated exchange ensued. Overwhelmed by anger anger and despair, Kimberly pulled out a gun and shot Hundley 5 times. She then reloaded the weapon and fired 5 more rounds into his body. Witnesses reported that after the shooting, Kimberly calmly returned to her car and drove away from the scene. Approximately 45 minutes later, she arrived at the Alcoa Police Department, where she turned herself in to the authorities. During the investigation, it was revealed that Kimberly had obtained a gun permit and had been practicing at a firing range in the months leading up to the shooting. The devastating discovery of her daughter's abuse had left her feeling helpless and angry, especially after learning that Hundley's eldest son had also allegedly abused Kimberly's son. The case sparked intense debate about the lengths a parent might go to protect their children and seek retribution for past abuses. Some sympathized with Kimberly's actions, arguing that the legal system had failed to deliver justice and that her response was understandable given the unimaginable pain and betrayal she had endured. In October 2005, a jury acquitted Kimberly of second-degree murder but found her guilty of voluntary manslaughter. In the end, these parents' stories show the devastating impact of child sexual abuse and the extreme lengths some will go to get justice. While their pain and anger are understandable, taking the law into your own hands is never the answer. It usually just leads to more violence and problems. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Criminal Corner so you don't miss the next ones.